Hello everybody. Today we are going to discuss about the uh, Keynesian consumption function, and our topic is Keynesian consumption and saving function under psychological law of consumption. But in this video we will discuss only about Keynesian consumption function, and we will discuss about the saving function in our next video. So as we know that basically income gets divided into two parts. One is the consumption and second one is the saving. That means total income which is received by the people, they divide this income into consumption and saving. And as far as income is concerned, Keynes talk about the income, that this income is real absolute disposable income. That means disposable income means after paying all the taxes, whatever is left over in the hands of the people for making their consumption and saving, that is known as disposable income. So this is real absolute disposable income, and out this income is the total of consumption plus saving. So it gets divided into consumption and saving. So according to Keynes, the aggregate demand and aggregate supply are the basic things which are given by the Keynes in his theoretical framework, and the equilibrium level of output exists where the aggregate demand is equal to aggregate supply, or where Z is equal to D. Z means aggregate supply and we have taken aggregate demand as D. So this aggregate supply or income gets divided into consumption and saving as given over here. And demand, as far as the demand is concerned, people make the demand, aggregate demand or aggregate expenditure which comes from the people. It is either on consumption goods or consumption expenditure, and along with that there is investment expenditure. That means aggregate demand have two components. One is the consumption expenditure and second one is the investment expenditure. And equilibrium in the economy exists where the aggregate supply is equal to aggregate demand. That means where the consumption plus saving is equal to consumption expenditure plus investment expenditure, or we can say where the saving is equal to investment, because consumption is common on both these sides. So where saving is equal to investment. Now if we only talk about the consumption expenditure, which is a very important component of both aggregate demand and aggregate supply, so this consumption expenditure is basically the largest component of aggregate demand, and it amounts between 60 to 70% of GDP. And in India it has been around 63% of GDP between, on an average, between 2011 to March 2020. And it is the most important factor in determining the level of economic activities. Level of economic activities get affected by the consumption expenditure. If consumption expenditure increases, level of economic activities go higher, and if consumption expenditure decreases, level of economic activities in the economy goes in the downward direction. So if we look, this is if we look at this important component of aggregate demand, then according to Keynes, this consumption function, this consumption expenditure depends on many factors. And these main factors, if we list them, then these factors are: first is income, then the distribution of income, how the income in the economies get distributed, whether it is even distribution or it is uneven distribution in the economy. That distribution of income also impacts the consumption expenditure. Then a age composition also impacts the consumption expenditure in the economy, whether the old people in the economy are, number of old people in the economy is larger, or number of children in the economy is larger, or number of youth is high in the economy. That age composition of also affects the level of consumption expenditure in the economy. Then sex composition, number of males, females, and different kind of genders which are existing in the economy, what kind of a composition is existing in the economy. Then sectoral composition, also impacts the consumption expenditure. Like for example, rural sector is higher or urban sector is higher, what kind of a sectoral composition is there, and the amount of wealth in the economy or in the hands of the people, that also impacts the consumption expenditure. And this consumption expenditure, when we represent the relationship between consumption expenditure and its factors or its determinants on which it depends, that is known as consumption function. So consumption function basically shows the functional relationship between consumption expenditure and its determinant, how due to these determinants consumption of expenditure get affected. That functional relationship we show with the help of consumption function. So, but Keynes, out of all these factors, Keynes believed that income is the most dominant factor in determining the level of consumption. So that is why the functional relationship between consumption and income, as according to Keynes, is termed as consumption function. That consumption is the function of income, and Keynes has taken this income as a real absolute disposable income. So current consumption is a function of current real absolute disposable income. So on the basis of that, consumption function which has been proposed by the Keynes was that C is equal to, that is consumption expenditure is equal to a plus by. This function has been, or this equation has been proposed by the Keynes, where a stands for autonomous consumption. Autonomous consumption means it is not related with the level of income. Even if the level of income is zero, then also people make certain minimum level of consumption to sustain. That is known as autonomous consumption. And over here in this equation, b is basically showing that how much change in consumption will be there due to change in income level. So B is representing the relationship between consumption and income level. So this consumption function has been proposed by Keynes. So next we will continue in the next video.